I don't know, do the math. I've been up since 4:30.
That's more than half your life.
Yeah. It's more than half of my life. We've had Bushes or Clintons only, or part of the White House or the administration. And now if Hillary gets elected, that's 4 or 8 more years of it. And I think that in all this great land of ours, we should have more than just 2 families who are qualified to serve as president.
I agree with you, and that brings me into the next subject. You have boldly spoken out, as a soldier yourself, understanding how firearms operate, that the Kennedy situation with JFK is a cover-up. I know you've been on a book tour, but the BBC came out on Monday with video footage and photos from the Ambassador Hotel, and they had, 4 different former CIA colleagues watch the film footage and say, that's the known CIA officers from Southeast Asia and the known CIA officers that on his deathbed, E. Howard Hunt said were involved killing JFK. He was running the operation. I, by the way, folks, have the only video of that. It hasn't been released yet. I'm going to put it in a film I'm making about JFK. Got it from his son, St. John Hunt. So now we even have the film footage of them there at the Ambassador Hotel. We have this individual, Caesar, shooting him in the back 4 times.
You're talking Robert now, right?
Yes, Robert Kennedy. So I'm just giving the listeners some background here. But now with Robert Kennedy, even the BBC and NBC are saying the CIA killed him. A, are you aware of those revelations? And B, your comment not just on JFK but RFK.
Well, I certainly have studied the JFK murder much more than the RFK murder because when I was wrestling, it was interesting that I flew a lot. And so one day I picked up a book on the JFK, one of the conspiracy books, and I got hooked on it because it's far more intriguing than anything Tom Clancy could even write about. And so I've studied it for years and years. I believe totally that Howard Hunt and the same people that did Watergate are the ones who were instrumental in killing John F. Kennedy. What I found interesting, though, is this. Do you remember when LBJ announced that he would not seek nor would he accept his nomination for a second term as president?
In 1967, yes, sir.
Exactly. Isn't it, do you think it's just coincidence that a mere 3 days later Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated? And that opened the door for Richard Nixon?
Absolutely, but now, I mean, the coroner in L.A. always said he was shot 4 times in the back with a different caliber than what Sirhan was shooting. Sirhan only got 1 shot off before they grabbed him and aimed the gun at the floor, and he still squeezed off the rounds. And then you've got this known CIA operative who was behind Robert Kennedy when he then got shot 3 times in the back and once in the back of the head. And now we have the film footage analyzed and the CIA colleagues who worked with the 3 operatives who were on film there. I mean, it's open and shut.
I think so, and I think John F. Kennedy, to me, if you take that also from a standpoint of very basic common sense, okay, they want us to believe that Oswald was this disgruntled little Marine who became Marxist-Leninist, ran off to Russia, defected, married a Russian woman, came back, hated our policy on Cuba, decided to get famous and shoot the president, right?
It's incredible.
Well, first of all, then if that's true, then why would anything have to be locked up because of national security? Because I was a Navy SEAL with a top-secret security clearance when I was in, and I certainly knew a few things, but I didn't know that much that would require the majority of everything, including my tax records, to be locked up because of national security. But now, if you were involved in a secret CIA, shall we say, espionage program of false defection over to Russia, well, then certainly you would have knowledge and documentation that probably should be locked up because
well, here's the proof.
Security.
Here's the proof. 3 years ago, because it is 40-something years later, they did release his CIA control number. He was at the U-2 spy base in Japan, and then when he defected back to the U.S., they didn't even debrief him. They just let him come right back into the country with his bride, as if he'd just defected and been an evil traitor. They just let him back in.
Well, actually, that isn't quite true because he disappeared in Amsterdam for a couple days, and it was there, I believe, that he went to a CIA safe house.
No, I know, but I mean, officially, they say they just let him in. You're right.
Exactly.
You're right.
Officially, they say he just got in, but if you follow it closely, you'll realize that he spent a couple days in Holland, and I think that's where it took place at a safe house.
Governor Ventura, you end your book talking about with a fake news headline saying, while independent presidential candidate Jesse Ventura is in a coma for the fourth consecutive day, clung to life with family members gathered at his side, a White House press spokesman denied mounting allegations that accused assassin Raul Santana was part of a wider plot. One entry reads, what are you saying at the end of the book with that statement?
Well, what I'm saying is the book is factual all the way till the last chapter, and I'm kind of throwing it out there. I hope I don't ruin it for everybody, but the last chapter is fiction, and I use myself as an example, and here's what I'm saying. I believe very strongly that if an independent candidate like myself, a rogue, were to get into the president's race legitimately, if the polls believed it looked like he had a chance to win, I believe that that candidate would either be physically assassinated or would be assassinated credibility-wise or in some manner by our government, because I do not believe they would ever allow a true independent or a citizen to become president of the United States. And I would say, and I say this in all seriousness, watch out Barack Obama.
Absolutely. Incredible revelations from Jesse the Mind Ventura, Governor Ventura. Final segment coming up, sir, but not just the book, Don't Start the Revolution Without Me. Any personal websites or other places you want to give out?
No, not really. Just, again, I look forward to people hopefully waking up in this country and stop being a lemming. Stop being lemmings. And shows like yours, Alex, can help prevent this.
Well, let's talk about how we prevent it, how we stand up to the oligarchy on the other side. Final segment with Governor Jesse Ventura. I'm Alex Jones, Infowars.com. Websites are prisonplanet.com, Infowars.com. Be sure and check them out daily as we chronicle the criminal activities of the New World Order, which is just simply the big private central banks that own the military-industrial complex and the dominant media who are on out-of-control power trips. Governor Ventura has agreed to stay 15 minutes graciously into the next hour. And why? I interviewed him about a year and a half ago, and he got into some questions of 9/11, but he said he wanted to research it more. He's now he told me he read 16 books on that subject and others while he's had time down at his summer or winter home in Mexico. And he said he'd be happy to get into 9/11. Just he brought it up, so he's staying with us a little bit longer to have time to get into that. Governor Ventura, you've got the floor. Give us your take on 9/11.
Well, first of all, Alex, let me state this. You know, being ex-military, when the attack initially took place and I was governor, I went on a very focused tunnel vision mode that our country had been attacked and what the hell do we need to do to repel it. So I today kick myself because at that point in time I had a position of power, and if I would have, you know, not been the way I was, the way all of us were so shocked when it happened, that in that position of power I could have raised a lot more questions at that time about the things that went down that day, and where today when I raise those questions, naturally it doesn't quite have the impact that it would have had back then. But to me, it's questions that are not being answered and haven't been answered about 9/11. And, you know, first and foremost, I think, is the fact that, okay, in New York City and Manhattan, 2 planes struck 2 buildings. We'll all be in agreement on that, I think. But how is it that a 3rd building fell 5 hours later? You know, what they call World Trade Center building number 7. And for people that think, well, it was just a smaller building, it was 51 stories high, which of course in Manhattan probably isn't that big of a building, but if you were to move that building to Austin, Texas, or to Minneapolis, Minnesota, it would be a huge building.
It's the biggest.
How could this building just implode into its own footprint 5 hours later? That's my first question. The 9/11 Commission never even brought it up. They didn't devote even 1 page to that in their big volume of investigation. Number two, how could those buildings fall at the speed of gravity? You know, if you put a stopwatch on them, both of those World Trade Center buildings were on the ground in 10 seconds. How can that be? If you took a billiard ball and dropped it from the height of the World Trade Center in a vacuum, it would hit the ground in 9.3 seconds. And if you took that same billiard ball and dropped it 10 stories at a time and merely stopped it and started it, it would take 30 seconds. If you dropped it every floor of the World Trade Center to the ground, simply stopping and starting it on gravity, it would take over 100 seconds to reach the ground.
Amazing.
And yet they're telling us that, and I could go on now after studying it, the planes hit the building. Okay, jet fuel is 4/5 kerosene, which is not a hot burning fuel, and they want us to believe that it melted these steel structured girders and caused these buildings to pancake collapse to the ground.